Welcome everyone to the Harnessing Drones for Conservation panel here at the EarthRanger User Conference 23. We appreciate everyone understanding the previous talk ran just a little bit over, so we're starting here just a moment behind, but I'm pleased to welcome to the stage today the panel with me, Lonnie McCaskill, who has just started the new nonprofit group Wildlife Conservation Drones and Technology, Willem Pretorius from Sabi Sand, Wilson Sairowua from Mara Elephant Project, and Dave Gaynor from the Mammal Research Institute of the University of Pretoria. The way the panel will work today is we will hear from each of the guests in turn so they can give you a little bit more background about themselves and the work that they have been doing. Then we'll walk through a few questions, high level about drones, to provide you with a little insight and more background. And then we'll be opening the floor to questions from the audience as we go along here. Look forward to a great conversation because these are all fantastic experts. And we'll begin with Wilson from the Mara Elephant Project.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wilson Sairowua from Mara Elephant Project, Kenya. So the organization I work is the Mara Elephant Project, which was established in the year 2011. That was actually when there was high poaching, a crisis in the Mara. So we started the project as an anti-poaching project, and we developed up to whereby we mitigate human-elephant conflicts, research, and actually the long-term monitoring team. So what we actually going to talk about today is the drone for conservation. So how we started to use the drone. Is how the Mara looks like is the Mara is divided into three parts. Actually, we have the Masai Mara National Reserve, which is protected, and we have the conservancies, and outside the protected area, where there are people and animals and elephants are many on that side. So we started by learning and getting data from the field and how human-elephant conflict is increasing all the time. So what happened is actually we started and we see that the rangers are responding to conflict all the time. So the rangers are being called by the community. They go and respond by moving elephant out of the fences, electric fences, and out of the farms. So one day we tested by actually trying to filming elephant with the drones, but we found that the elephant are afraid of the sound of the drones. The reason is because the drone sound like a swarm of bees. So that is why the elephant are afraid of a drone. So as the Mara Elephant Project, we have been using drones, testing using since 2012, and up to last year when we actually got a full permission from the county government, the Kenya Wildlife Service, and the Kenya Civil Aviation to fly drone in mitigating human-elephant conflict. So what we did is actually train our rangers, and as the government is very strict on flying drones, so we started by training the rangers. Currently, we have trained 16 rangers who are qualified as a drone pilot. And we have also acquired different types of drones. We have got the Mavic, which are actually used by the rangers during daytime. And we have also the thermal camera drones, like the Matrix and also the Mavic Enterprise 3. So all our rangers are trained. So what you see from the slide here is the training that is taking place. So it's actually a 7 days training. And if you qualified, is being examined by the KCAA, the Kenya Civil Aviation. So unfortunately, some of the videos will not be able to play here. But what you see here, this is a video of 4 bulls which were caught inside the electric fences. So we had to use the drone. The good thing with the drone is actually when you're chasing the elephants, you are able to see, and you are able actually to control elephants and people from meeting. So this is actually, sometimes when you're chasing elephants, you might be chasing towards people, but actually with a drone, you are able to monitor and see where you're chasing the elephants. Or in that case, you are actually guiding the elephants or showing the elephants the direction where they're supposed to be. So this is a technology whereby the rangers are armed with the technology by use of a drone. So yeah, sorry, some of my slides are missing actually here, but I can actually just explain the criteria on how we're using. So we have the SOPs, so that is actually the rangers get to learn, understand, and have the emergency measures whenever you are landing the drones in case of an emergency. So all our rangers are trained on all these. So as the Mara Elephant Project, we have actually seen and 90% response of elephants. But actually, as you all know, the elephants are very clever, and they are learning these sounds all the time. Especially when you're chasing females with the young one, they might be able to learn and see it's a drone coming. So in that case, we have actually come up with another way of putting some chili bugs under the drone. So in the case of an elephant trying to look at the drone, you spray with the chili, you know, the deterrent. The elephants don't really like the chili. So it's a technology that we are learning all the time. And through the EarthRanger, we will be able actually to get all the tracks and everything from the drones going into EarthRanger. Thank you.
Excellent. Next, we'll hear from Lonnie McCaskill.
So I started using drones back in about 2017. I'm mostly from the zoo field. I've worked in zoos since about 1984. But what's brought me to using drones in the field is I also work with a lot of crocodile and turtle repatriation projects throughout Southeast Asia. I always thought drones would be a good way to find crocodiles and where you can't use a boat. So started working with WCS back in 2016 and started using drones in the field about 2020 due to COVID. Wasn't able to be able to travel, but was able to travel in the United States where I was able to test a lot of the different types of drones for crocodiles and alligator conservation. Which one is it here?
The right arrow. Right.
Thank you. There. So back in 2020, I was able to go down to Florida. First, wanted to see how easy it was to find alligators and crocodiles in areas you couldn't get a boat into. It's very easy to find them. So that was the first challenge. Next thing I wanted to do is see how quickly I could find nests. Because one of the projects we're involved in Cambodia and Laos is repatriation of Siamese crocodiles. So we collect the eggs, hatch them, raise them to a meter. So using the drone, you quickly get an eye for what to look for finding a nest. And if you look in the upper right-hand, about the center, you can actually see the female next to the nest. Then the development of thermal drones came out and quickly able to identify the alligator nest using a thermal drone. What's really interesting is alligators start laying their nest or making their nest early July, and that's the beginning of the rainy season in Florida. During that time, it's like a really strong composting effect. So you get a really strong signature using the thermal drone. As the months go on in incubation, the rainy season is continuing to kick in. That nest seems to lose its thermal imagery. But again, an advancement in drones in just a couple of years going into thermal. And just this last year, I was able to test with Autel a new night vision drone. I don't know if the video is going to work in this, but this is about midnight. And the night vision drones, it's an incredible new advancement with drones and sensors. It's like a black and white movie, and as opposed to a thermal drone where you just see the signature of the crocodile and the alligator on the surface, you can actually see down in the water using the night vision drone. So from there, I started going to our different countries while I was working with WCS, Cambodia, Laos, Brazil, Bolivia, and training some of the field staff how to use drones in the field. So sharing best practices. There were already some drone pilots in these countries, but again, it's always really good to work with other pilots, see how they operate, and then see how you operate. Again, I started partnering back in the United States with the local law enforcement and public safety departments in Texas, and they have a really well-organized drone programs in almost every county throughout Texas. And when they started using drones in Texas, they all kind of got together and came up with their own book of SOPs and best practices. Instead of every county basically coming up with their own set of rules and how to operate drones, they knew that they'd be working together. So they all came together and made their own kind of like SOP manual. So whenever there's cross-county uses of drones, they all working from the same page. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Dr. Dave Gaynor.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I got into drones and looking for snares. I'm supervised the sort of reintroduction of lions and cheetahs into the Zambezi Delta. Like many conservation areas, before we reintroduced the lions in 2017, the anti-poaching team removed 4,000 snares. In the year that the lions were introduced, moved 2,000 snares, and in the following years, it's stuck around about a removal of 1,000 snares. Despite that intensive removal of snares, 8 of the introduced lions have come to be snared, while 3 were rescued from snares. You know, you get a immobility record, you go and check it out and you release the snares. My experience there convinced me that snaring is the biggest threat in conserved areas. The biggest threat to most biodiversity is loss of habitat. But in conserved areas, you don't have loss of habitat, and your biggest threat is actually snares. I mean, 13 million snares in conserved areas in Southeast Asia, and it goes on. I mean, our experience is not, and I came back last October, determined to try and find a solution to snares. Yeah, okay. And I was fortunate enough, because a friend of mine was doing the Masters in Radar, and Prof. Ings from UCT has developed a synthetic aperture radar. As you can see, this is not a product I can offer you now. This is development. This is where snares, where we're going to. And here's the snare, and we successfully trialed it. The idea of the synthetic aperture radar is that you fly at 120 meters, and at side looking, you look at 200-meter offset. And for a kilometer, it has the potential to pick up every snares. It's at 2 gigahertz, so it sees through vegetation. And the hope is that when this is fully developed, that you'll fly a mission, you'll upload the data, and the rangers via EarthRanger will get the position, the target identity. Is it a snare? Is it a gin trap? Is it a weapon? Is it a chainsaw? And the probability of the right detection of that. You know, so there's a 99% that it's a snare, and the rangers can then go on the ground to do the snare. While I was doing this, I wanted people to get a sense of the scale of the problem and what we're doing. So while I was actually doing this figure for this talk at ICCB, it just struck me is that really to be effective, people have underestimated the size of conservation areas. To be effective, you need a serious duration to use drones. I mean, we're talking about multi-rotor drones, which people are using very effectively. But in a lot of ways, drones haven't met the great expectation as a general daily tool for conservation. And I'll come back to this, but one can see why. Because, I mean, we've been using drones that don't have lots of endurance, and even when we have long endurance drones, they don't cover the areas effectively that we need to cover in there. So the drone would fly and it would run grids, and our hope is that it would actually detect 80% of the snares. And this is what the trials look like. The drone's flying this way, that's a 1 kilometer stretch. Here are the targets out there, and we're picking up the targets in a simplified habitat. And here's a closer, here's some of the targets, there's the other targets. So people have tried multiple ways of detecting snares, but none have been successful. And it's looking like synthetic aperture array radar will actually work. And in thinking about a suitable aerial platform, we're collaborating with another South African Cape Town organization, FlyH2, which is developing one of the first hydrogen cell, fuel cell drones. Now, the thing about hydrogen is that it's got 25 times the energy density of lithium-ion batteries. So you can have an electric drone which has enormous endurance. Okay. Mark sometimes claims 20 hours endurance. I'd rather go 10 hours at full load. And this is the 28th of February, and this was the first maiden flight of FlyH2 drone in Citrusdal here. So again, these aren't off-the-shelf technologies that I can offer a solution now, but this is where I see drones are going. Okay. Sorry, press hard. Okay. There was more, yeah. Okay. Okay.
So can you just speak to it?
Okay. All right. All right. So what I had on. Okay. So. All right. Let's just change the thing. I'll go back to here. Okay. So while doing this whole exercise, it became like really clear to me is that if drones are going to replace a lot of standard management, if they're going to become part of daily management, you can't have a drone, so like the drones that we're talking about, DJI and Autel, they've got a maximum flying time of 42 minutes. And Sabi Sands has got a good way under operational conditions to switch it out. But clearly, you're not going to cover an area the size of Serengeti using a drone, you know? And for me, this is the one factor. As conservationists, we've totally underestimated how much endurance we need for drones to be successful. And that's why I'm punting long endurance drones as a game changer. Because suddenly, once you've got a long endurance drone, you can do a whole lot of things that you do with fixed wings and helicopters. There are things that you can't do that fixed wings and helicopters, like you can't take management to meetings and you can't provide support for rangers, drop them off in a helicopter. There's a lot of things. This is complementary. This is not replacing drones. But suddenly you've got an aerial platform that can do things for a very low flying time cost. So suddenly you can do things. You can get aerial awareness of for managers just to see what their reserves like, if there are any incursions. You can actually automate game counting. So game counting then, instead of saving up money for every 2 years a game count, because you're using fixed wings or an R22 or an R44 because you've got observers, you could actually invest in a drone with long endurance, and you could actually do game counts on every 2 monthly basis, you know. I do believe it's a game changer. So I think the aerial space is going to be divided up into multi-rotor drones, which are fantastic for site-specific investigations. They're going to be fantastic, as you'll see, for support during operational things. And Sabi Sands has got it down to a T, how well they're using quadcopter drones. But I really do believe the conservation community has to throw its weight behind supporting a long endurance drone, because it's only at that stage. Throughout this conference, I've been hearing people saying, well, we're getting fire alerts on EarthRanger, but we can't use our scarce airborne results because we're not sure it's a fire, and I can't use that flying time to get out there, you know. We've got an immobility alert on EarthRanger, and that's not going to work if you've got drones with like even an hour, you need to, with an hour endurance. But you can do it from a central place. You can go and check out those things if you've got a drone that's got about 10 hours endurance and flies at 126 kilometers. Yep.
No, that's great. And next we'll hear from Willem, and that was actually a very good segue to hear what they're doing in Sabi Sand.
All right, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me there at the back? All right, so, yeah, no pressure. Lots have been said about drones. So, yeah, from the Sabi Sand side, I am Willem Pretorius. I'm the head of Ranger Services. And thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to come and have a chat to you guys about the drones and how we utilize them. So we first introduced drones into the Sabi Sand in 2021. Starting with the Mavic 2 drones. It's got a thermal capability. Obviously, for us, it was a learning process. There was a lot of trial and error. There's no manual for this. So we had to write the manual ourselves, as well as the SOP. Because if you have the drone, you still need that standard operating procedures of how you're going to make use of the drone. After we started using the Mavic 2, we invested in two Matrice M50Ts. It's the big drone towards your left on the table there. And that drone has got the capability to also fly in the rain, which is a bit of a good game changer for us. This year, we also got two Mavic 3Ts that you see on the right-hand side if you face the table. So, concept of the operations, how are we going to make use of these drones? We're going to make use of them in security and conservation. And as I said, we needed to have that SOP. How are we going to utilize these drones in our daily operations? You can't just take a drone and go for a flight and think you're going to be successful. You need a plan. You need a standard operating procedure of how you're going to use the drone. And so we went and we broke it down in all the various aspects. So if we look at conservation, we're currently making use of the drones for wildlife monitoring, especially in big herds like buffalo and so on. And unfortunately, we're picking up on a lot of snaring. So if there's a big herd of buffalo, we can easily deploy the drone, have a good look through all of those animals and pick up the animal that's got the snare, and then we can intervene. Fire planning and monitoring, because we're sitting with quite a lot of community on our boundary. It does happen where the community burn their fields, and it might jump over to the reserve. So it's a good tool for us to monitor those fires, and that including our own fires, if we do fire breaks, to monitor it and to do the operational planning on the ground to make sure it doesn't jump to areas that you don't want to be burned. River monitoring. With the Sabi Sand, every year, when the Sand River comes down, it washes away our fences, and it is impossible to reach areas. So we make use of the drone to go and patrol those the rivers and drainage lines, and just to see when is a good time for us to try and attempt to cross it. It also helps us to keep our lodges informed of when certain areas can be used and not to be used. Locating of animals for interventions. In this specific case, last year we lost a female rhino. We picked up with the drones during the patrols after the incident that she actually had a calf. We managed to follow this specific calf throughout the whole night. As the batteries get depleted on one drone, we sent the next one in, do a handing and taking over, bring the one back with the flat battery. And so we managed to keep eyes on this animal throughout the whole night. And with first light the next morning, we had the helicopter team and vet team in, darted the animal successfully, and we could safely send it off to care for wild. Locating animals outside the reserve. We've had it previously where some of our naughty lions break out through the fence. In this specific case, 2 lions caught a Nguni cow outside of the reserve. We managed to keep eyes on them, kept eyes on them throughout the night, and we actually managed to chase them back with the drones the next morning. And this we've been able to do successfully with elephants as well. They go over the fence, our operations team see them crossing the fence, we deploy the team with the drone, and they successfully chase them back with the drones. As you mentioned, the elephants do not like the sound of the drones, they think it's bees. The owning operations, if we specifically pick up on an animal that's in a very high risk area, we will deploy the drones, we'll keep eyes on that animal throughout the night. Same story, next morning, we will send the team in, dart the animal, and remove the horns. On the security side, our main taskings is detection patrol flights. So we do a lot of patrols on our boundary. We deploy our drones on a daily basis. In the mornings, in the afternoons, in the evenings, it's a regular thing. We've got the Mavic 2s that's handed out to our teams on the ground. They make use of those drones. And then the managers, the more senior people, will make use of the M50Ts and the Mavic 3s. Investigations with gunshot reports. If we do have a gunshot report during the evening, we will deploy a drone operator to that specific point. They will fly grids in that area to see if they can pick up on suspects. We have successfully arrested suspects last year by following up with drones, so it does work. We've also arrested a pangolin poacher as well in the reserve that was also picked up with drones. Vehicles driving at night, obviously, if you pick up on suspect movement in a specific area that's not supposed to be there, we also make use of the drones to intercept, see where the vehicle is going, and that gives us time to put our ground teams in the right places to stop the vehicle to see who it is. Air reconnaissance, monitoring of the rhino population that we do on a regular basis. If we pick animals up that needs to be dehorned, then we know we can keep an eye on those animals until we have a plan together to dehorn these animals. Orphaned rhinos, as I've mentioned previously with the incident we had last year, and then follow-up operations with our teams. So how that works, if our teams or our fence patrol, for instance, picks up on an incursion on the reserve, we will deploy our reaction team to that specific position with K9, and they will have a drone capability with them. That drone capability over the team keeps them safe and also gives them an early warning if there is obstacles coming ahead of them. At the same time, we'll have a secondary drone operator that will fly grids, and that person's responsibility is to look for the suspects. So the advantages of the drones: it can be easily transported and deployed because it is relatively small and light, apart from the M50T, but that's fine. I mean, that's got a different capability. If we need to fly in the rain, we make use of the M50T. The thermal capability on both these drones, even the Mavic 2, is exquisite. If you fly at night, you can really see everything very well. It's relatively cheap to keep in the air. They do need to get serviced every year, and it's not that expensive. We service the drones now for about 2,300 Rand. That was the yearly service, so it's not that expensive. Obstacle detection and early warning, as I've mentioned already. Follow-ups outside of the reserve. If you pick up on maybe a fire outside of the reserve or something you quickly want to go and have a look, it's easy to put up the drone, quickly have a look, and then just bring the drone back. And it still has that element of surprise when you reach your target. Disadvantages? Yes, it does have a restricted flight time. On the Matrice M50Ts, they say 45 minutes, but it really goes down to the pilot. How do you fly that drone? What is your weather circumstances? Is it very windy? Maybe you'll get 35 minutes out of it on a good day. Advertised, the Mavic 3 goes for 42 minutes, but yeah, we're still testing it to see if it will reach that 42 minutes. Drone pilot availability, unfortunately, it's not everyone who can fly these drones well. It does take time, and the technology changes. Everyone knows with the war in Ukraine, especially with drones and the availability of drones and batteries, the technology keeps on changing rapidly. And the other thing is then the RPL license. Through CAA, everyone needs to go through that. So you need an RPL license to operate these drones, which is quite time-consuming and very expensive. So in this video here, some of our colleagues were following suspects that came in with hunting dogs to come and poach. You see the guy on the left side has got an impala strapped on his back. And we kept eyes on them. Unfortunately, this was out of the reserve towards the community area, so we could follow them up to a certain distance, up to where their house was. But the next morning when we went to go and have a look there, unfortunately, there was no evidence. But you'll see when they start picking up on the drone, the guy in the front will start running. This footage you see here was taken with the Mavic 2. So that's not even the best quality like these two, and it's really not that bad. And then in this next video, the team's picked up on suspects inside the reserve. Once I play it, you will see that there's birds that's going to start flying away. And at that stage is when the guy actually shot at the drone to try and shoot it out of the air, but obviously unsuccessful. You'll now see the suspects moving away. The second suspect's carrying the rifle. During this operation, early the next morning, one of the suspects was successfully arrested. Unfortunately, the other two managed to get away. Rhino monitoring, I mean, you can clearly see there on the left with the black dot how clearly you can see the animals during the night. And you've obviously got various functions on the aircraft that you can choose from. Insights and experiences. So it's a couple of aspects to keep in mind if you're going to operate with drones, especially during the night. Know your environment. It's very easy to fly into a tree, or perhaps there's power cables or something, so it's important to know your environment. Distance is not the main measure here, but flying time is. We've had it on many occasions where we fly out with the drones, and you don't have enough time to bring it back, and you need to land it in the road somewhere and go and pick it up with the vehicle. That happens. Especially if you get a headwind on your way back, yes, your battery will tell you you've got enough time, but really you don't. So you need to find a safe place to land it. Software needs to be upgraded on a regular basis. After you take off, you need to do a 360 around your own position as well, just to make sure that there's no lion stalking you. So you need to stay safe. And then you need more than one drone to be effective during operations. So we're currently working with 9 drones in the reserve. We've got enough batteries for each drone to keep them in the air for the whole night. So we can effectively fly 6 to 7 hours with each drone. And if you've got 2 drones, you've effectively got 14 hours just on those 2. A good altitude for us is between 30 and 50 meters. Launch in open areas, trees can restrict signal. I'm sure everyone that's worked with drones before knows that. If you lose signal, just gain height. It's very important to do regular training with your rangers in the field, especially when you start flying a bit too low to them. Try and avoid that, because if your team can't hear what's happening around them, you're going to endanger them. So you need to practice those things from the beginning. Long-term cost, obviously, because the drones keep on evolving, it is a yearly expense that will just get higher and higher. Check your weather conditions and wind, and have enough batteries, as I mentioned earlier on. I thank you.
Can we just leave this here? Cool. Thank you very much, Willem. Wonderful insights from the panel here on really outstanding use cases for drones, ranging from snare detection, animal deterrence, animal identification, anti-poaching, fire detection, much more. I'm curious, and I would love to hear from you all as an initial volley for questions. I ask this of almost all technologists when I'm learning about a new topic such as drones. What does it take to not only bring the technology to bear, but to actually operationalize it? It's one thing to just put technology out and treat it like a science fair project. That doesn't work for conservation. And I'd love to hear from you all a little bit about who are you putting drones in the hands of, what sort of training are they getting, what sort of equipment are they carrying in the field, and what type of backup equipment and costs are associated with that. So if you could each speak to that briefly, and then we'll turn it over to questions from the audience. Anyone want to start?
Yeah, like I said, what we try and do is, especially with drones that we've sort of not phased out, but as we get newer drones in, we will take the older drones like the Mavic 2s and we will train our rangers on the ground. Usually it's the rank carrying people like the corporals and the sergeants, because they've got they're a bit more flexible to stop their vehicle and deploy the drone and go and fly while the team is out on their patrol. So for us, it's essential to have that capability and to continue with the training and retraining with the guys. And the more we can put them in the air, the better. It's the force multiplier for us.
Again, it's kind of a job assessment you do first to see what the job is this field biologist is using it for. We do that one-on-one, talking with them. We start out, again, using the smaller drones to train on before we advance them up to a higher, more technical drone. But starting out small, do a really kind of a job assessment, what they're looking to do, and then try to pair them with the correct drone.
Yeah, for us is quite different, because actually for you to fly a drone, you need to have an RPL. RPL which actually come from the Civil Aviation Authority. And after you get your RPL, is actually you need also to get authorization with the location and the coordinates of where you are intending to fly your drone. After you get all this, that is actually when you go now through the SOP and the organization structure on how to use the drone. So in that case, the rangers are actually all trained. They have the RPL, and now they are ready to go to the field.
I mean, we've got a different use case and we're in a different stage. But if you're asking about how to make something the most effective, in our case, the way to make, say, snare and gin trap detection most effective is to cover a large area. The way the application is envisaged is to generate a very simple output after a flight, simply with the GPS location, whether the target is a snare, snare or a gin trap, and the probability of detection. Okay, there's nothing that kills a technology more than having a lot of false positives, because people stop reacting out to the false positive. So in terms of our use case for it to be most effective, you've got to cover a large area. A long endurance drone means that you're not playing whack-a-mole, so that you cover a whole area. A lot of snare detection, people try and optimize where they look for snares, which is fantastic. It's absolutely the right thing to do. But when you put pressure on there, it shifts the snaring pressure. It's a completely different case if you've got a long enough duration to cover a whole area. And the most important thing is to get accurate information out to the ground teams. You know, our hope for the drone detection, the synthetic aperture detection of snares, is that one would be able to pull up 80% of the snares. And that would change the economics of snaring, with the advantage is that you actually not spending time sort of arresting people, which sucks a lot of resources, but you're actually changing the economics for the snarers. So for it to be effective, you need to cover large areas and immediately get that information with no false positives to the rangers.
Cool, thank you. Can we hear from the audience? What questions do you all have? Yes.
Thank you. You mentioned counting game with drones. I know they've done it with zebra and elephant up in East Africa and things like that. But in the bushveld environment, are you aware of anyone who's done it successfully for animals like kudu, etc.?
Yes, so a number of people approaching it, and as we keep on saying, the technology keeps on different. So I know AVCore has made a lot of progress and is able to do that. And the innovation that they did that is, first of all, I mean, the thing to point out is, I think everyone knows in Savu, they did a published test which actually showed that automatic game counts based on photographs is better than observers. And for some species, you have up to 40% undercount. You know, so the first thing to realize is that it's actually more accurate in terms of counting game in the savannah to do it photographically rather than, you know, the normal observer, pilot, 3 observers, the usual marks on the windows and that. So the first thing is to know that it's better than that. And the second thing to know is that, yes, it is right on the verge of becoming possible to do full game counts in that. And the way they do that is they combine thermal imaging with an optical camera, okay? So what happens is you do this whole series of photographs that overlap the usual stuff, and then it goes up into the cloud, and you do blob recognition on thermal images. So suddenly you're changing the area that you look into to only the places where you potentially have animals, okay? And then it goes on to the optical recognition of animals, and it will recognize kudu and that. The field is changing hugely. It's changing from the case where you can count seabird colonies accurately to where you can actually count that. And for them, it's the combination of using the thermal technology to identify individuals and the optical technology to identify those individuals.
Thank you. Further comments from the panel?
Yeah, I just recently saw a video. I was told it was from a Matrice 300, but it's got object recognition. There's actually a herd of cattle in Central America running, and had every cattle in the video outlined and targeted. So they're coming out, and Autel has also come out with object recognition, and it's got where it recognizes people, boats, and vehicles immediately when it comes on, and you can touch one of them and track them with that. So again, the technology is really moving quickly with that.
Yes.
Thank you. How you guys do manage data collected by your drones, please?
The question is, how do you manage data collected by drones?
So currently, the data that we are collecting is actually the number, counting the number of elephants and also the injuries, and also in terms of recording the conflicts. So it's different because currently EarthRanger doesn't support the drones, so we can actually see the drones' activities. But we are actually recording it in each and every different department. So for example, in terms of counting animals, each department has got a way by use only of Excel and recording the number of livestock or number of elephants by just counting one by one. So currently we don't really have a system that we can actually say it is counting automatically or whereby we can record, or a system where we say the data is recorded. So we are actually doing it in a way that each department recording data separately. But we are actually going to whereby EarthRanger will be storing all the tracks, images, and everything that is recorded by drone.
Yeah, for us, we upload all of our data after the flights to our server, so we keep everything safe there. If we need to go and have a look at footage or photographs again, we can easily withdraw it. And then obviously all the flights are logged with the pilot and the times, etc.
Next question? Yes.
Thank you. So I have 2 questions. Do you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, but it helps to speak up even with the mic. So.
Okay. So my first question is about the data collected, especially for the fixed-wing drones, and if you think to have processing on board, or you have to wire the landing of the drone to process this data. And the second question is about the cost of the drone, because if we want to deploy this technology on a large scale, so the cost of the drone should be not very expensive. Thank you.
Cool. Would anyone like to comment on onboard processing of data collected and costs of drones?
All right, so when we purchased the M32s last year, they were about 200,000 for one. You can probably get them cheaper now, probably in the range of 175, 180. And the Mavic 3s went for 134,000. So they're quite expensive. That's what these ones cost. Oh, fixed wings we don't use. That's.
All right, let me deal with the easier thing. I mean, it depends what you're collecting on the fixed wing. If you're doing a game count, you don't want to process any of that blob recognition or animal recognition on that. It's just too power intensive, and you're competing with your airborne platform for battery power. So I don't foresee for lots of applications, a lot of it will be post-processing, but within like half an hour of the drone landing. The cost of drones, the cost of fixed-wing drones is terrible. So like this, it's I don't know. There's no way around it. It's like the estimated cost of this hydrogen fuel cell drone is $154,000 US. But no. Yeah, you won't buy a helicopter for that. You won't even buy a second-hand Cessna for that. But it's like, so I really think one has to think really creatively about developing a drone for conservation. I mean, quite clearly one can stand next to a fixed-wing drone, like a 3-meter wingspan with electric motors and that. And the physical cost isn't the same as even a light sport aircraft with a Rotax motor and rubber wheels and instrumentation for the pilots and that, I mean, I think one's got to face, sort of the costing of drones and what they do is not based on the physical instruments in the drone. It's part of the intellectual property, but it's also, drones are based on what price the market will take. And the market will take, well, let's price the drone. How would we do this job without a drone, okay? So with a fixed-wing drone, I mean, we'd either use a high-wing Cessna or an R22 or an R44. An R22 is $400 US an hour flying time, and so if you leave the price up to the market, drones are really expensive. I mean, I'm a conservationist. I'd rather have conservation develop a conservation drone where it then is able to get it at the cost of making the drone plus all the expertise in making the drone. So you can clearly see I'm battling with this because drones have got this huge potential to become a daily monitoring tool, not a special thing. And if one brings the price down, then things that those lucky reserves, which have got an air wing with fixed wings or helicopters, you can do things that they can do. And those ones that have got it, you can do things more often, like game counts on it every month. And I've thought this a lot, and I think the conservation community, I think they've got to realize what an impact having a long endurance drone would be, and to invest in developing its own drone, which then is available to the conservation community at a price that reflects the cost of the drone rather than the services it's replacing. Sorry, long answer to a difficult question. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll hear from Lonnie next, and then I think one more question.
Aside from the initial cost of the drone, though, you can easily spend the amount of the drone on batteries. If you want to keep your drone flying, if you don't have a rapid charger, batteries for the DJI run in U.S. $250 to $300. For the M30, they're really expensive, about $600, I think, for the batteries. And you also, one of the things I learned early on, you don't want to go cheap. You don't want to buy batteries from a third-party vendor. You want to buy batteries from the drone manufacturer because they're lithium. They can be really dangerous, and you see all the time fires in New York and across the United States, people using the wrong kind of batteries. But you can easily spend as much or more money on the batteries as you do the drone.
Cool. Yes.
Yeah, Dave, just to follow up, while you guys are developing an affordable drone for us, I'm really, I know this is a drone session, but I don't want to take away from that, but I'm really interested in the SAR technology that you're developing. We have a big problem with ropes and wire snares in particular. So while we're waiting for that drone technology to evolve, is it possible to attach that to a helicopter or to a fixed wing? And is there like a maximum allowable flying speed to make that optimal and to optimize that time?
Okay, yeah. So the actual instrument is we actually fly it on light sports aircraft, like a Savannah type thing. So it is possible to do that. The technology challenge that we're facing now is the radar's up and working, and it detects metal. The challenge that we're finding is tuning it to actually detect and get better at recognizing the signature of the snares. You know, speaking back to, you don't want false positives. You don't want to send out rangers and they find it's a Coke can in the bush. So yes, I mean, in fact, it's going out on the synthetic aperture radar is going out this Sunday, tomorrow. It's going to do a different mission for the sugar estate, and there it will be fixed to a Savannah aircraft. So it can be there. I think what I've got to make clear is, I mean, everyone else is showing technology which is mature and is out there and is off the shelf. We're sitting in this dip where we've actually done the test. We know it's got potential, and we're trying to get funding to actually make this thing work. And that's, anyone knowing technology sort of knows that's a really difficult dip to get through and a really frustrating thing because one just needs the money. I need engineering analysis time to get this thing right, and that's sort of where we sit in. But that's the development stage of the technology. Yeah.
Sorry, just to follow up regarding speed. I mean, is there like
Okay, so I mean, 65, 70 kilometers is good for synthetic aperture radar. Possibly and I'll have to speak to Prof. Mikings about this, is possibly 130 Ks. You know, I mean, that would push up. You know, even at 70 Ks, you're scanning 70 square kilometers in an hour, which is a significant area to cover. You know, and then you're moving from sort of targeted snare detection to actually covering whole areas and removing all the snares. And it's at that point that one can change the economics of snaring. Yeah.
Outstanding. It looks like we have time for one final question, in fact. Yes?
It's a very short one, just the weight of that LiDAR you're speaking of? Or
Okay, it's 5 kilograms of
Okay.
batteries. Yeah. And just to speak to batteries and that, so the beauty about hydrogen fuel cells is that you can actually generate it with solar actually on your site. So at Fox headquarters, you generate the hydrogen. And after that 10 or 20-hour mission, you just fill it up, pressurized into the pods on the wings. Yeah.
Outstanding. Well, thank you all very much for attending the panel discussion today, and a special thank you to all of our panelists. There's a lot of expertise up here, and I would encourage you all to please engage with them after this meeting, and I'm sure they would love to carry forward discussions and make future plans with you all potentially. Thank you.